Hello, Internet. Welcome to episode 332 of the Assorted Calibers podcast, the Second Amendment podcast. There's a little bit for everyone. I'm Weer'd, and with me tonight, you know her. You're waiting for her. She's the greatest hostess in the entire world, Erin Paulette. How you doing, Erin?
I'm angry. I'm frustrated. I have a lot of very strong feelings that I can't talk about because they have nothing to do with the Second Amendment and therefore have nothing to do with this podcast. But just that's how I'm doing.
Okay.
How are you, Weer'd?
I was better until I realized that we were just talking for a little while, and I was talking about a lot of stuff that you didn't care about, and didn't realize that you were this upset. And
oh no, honey, no, I'm not mad at you.
Well, I know you're not mad at me, but you could have vented. When
you were making me laugh, it was fine. I needed it.
Okay, well, I will take that. So, I am sorry. I have some guesses, and I don't think I can kill them all, but I'll try.
Well, what's important is that you try. Thank you, Weer'd.
Yes.
So speaking of trying, our favorite try-hard, and I do use favorite in sarcasm quotes, David Hogg has won the election as, I believe he's a vice chair, not the vice chair, of the Democrat National Committee.
Yes. I mean, this is, well, so I'm amused as hell because, I mean, you're going to hear a weird audio Fisk on this show, and I'm like, oh, good. There's going to be some Fisk material because when David Hogg's mouth gets opened up, those feet just go right in there. He is neither a bright man nor a tactful man, and I like that. That's good. That's good when someone like that who shares none of my beliefs holds a position like that. But on the other hand, again, one of the things that I am constantly talking about, and it's something I really do care deeply about, is I want the Second Amendment not to be a partisan issue anymore.
Exactly.
And by them taking David Hogg, who the only reason why anybody knows his damn name is because he was a student at Parkland. Debate as you will. There's conspiracy theories and this and that. I don't care. I'm going to take him on his word. It was pretty obvious. No, he was not directly involved with the shooter. He may not have even been. I think he's officially agreed that he was not even in one of the buildings where people were getting shot, but he was in the school when it was being attacked, allegedly, and I'm fine with I'm fine with taking him at his word. But he was in that, and the reason why he is known is he got snapped up by Michael Bloomberg with the whole March for Our Lives thing, which I don't know for a fact, but I'm pretty certain was formed in the same way that I also don't know as a fact, but I'm pretty certain was formed the same as Moms Demand Action, which was they cooked up this idea, had it all set to go, and were just waiting for a shooting. And Moms Demand Action, it was after the Sandy Hook shooting, and Shannon Watts, who was making millions of dollars, suddenly became a stay-at-home mom only for 6 months. That's strange. And then as soon as there was a shooting, suddenly had this major quote-unquote grassroots thing, but was almost instantly grabbed up by every town. And then March for Our Lives, there were Bloomberg people on the ground within hours of the shooting being announced to find the students that had the most anti-gun opinions and to take them and turn them into spokespeople for every town. And one of those ones was David Hogg. And yeah, and so his claim to fame is he is in favor of gun control. And now he is, a key player within the Democrat Party, which is the Democrat Party doubling down on being anti-gun, of which...
And
go ahead.
And just to refresh people's memories, as recently as October 29 of 2023, David Hogg tweeted, "If you don't support banning semi-automatic rifles, you should leave the Democratic Party and join the Guns Over People Party." He is literally taking the position that if you aren't anti-gun, you don't belong as a Democrat, and you should leave the party. And this attitude, he's now bringing as vice chair to the Democrat National Party. A lot of my predictions I've made have been wrong, and honestly, I've been happy for that. But I just have the very strong feeling that this isn't going to go well for him or for the DNC, and he's going to push out a lot of pro-gun Democrats, like our friend Lara Smith of the Liberal Gun Club.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't take much looking for you to see that there's a lot of left-of-center people that are buying guns, getting guns, are concerned, especially with Trump coming back into power. There was a lot of people concerned about Trump in 2016, and those people are still concerned now and going through. And then, there's the whole, defund the police and Black Lives Matter and other groups like that. And if you stand with those groups, you've got good cause to want guns. And so there is no, and of course the standard issue, well, what if the predators of the world, being a robber, being someone with mental health problems, being just generally an antisocial person. That's not a partisan thing. That's not one group of people. So you can be attacked, you could be assaulted, you could be concerned. But also further, if you are an ethnic minority, if you are an openly queer person, you could be targeted for violence. So that's a reason to own guns. So yeah, I don't see any reason for it to be a partisan issue. And, furthermore, I mean, especially, with the pink pistols and all that, like I know a lot of, and being in Massachusetts, I know a lot of left of center gun owners and a lot of left of center queer gun owners. And yeah, it's one of those, like they are very, very unhappy with the anti-queer agenda that's going on in the Republican Party. And yeah, and now they've also, on the other hand, they've got the anti-gun agenda of the Democrat Party. And then what do we do?
So I'm going to put a bow on this by reciting a quote. "Under no pretext should arms and ammunition be surrendered. Any attempt to disarm the workers must be frustrated by force if necessary." Do you know who said that, Weer'd?
Is that Karl Marx?
That is indeed Karl Marx when he was addressing the Central Committee to the Communist League in 1850.
Mm-hmm.
So as the internet aphorism goes, if you go left enough, you get your guns back.
And I actually disagree with that whatsoever. I mean, I just see the issue is the people that are going after guns are neither left nor right. They're just authoritarians. And if you want to control other people, you don't want them to have guns. And
oh yeah,
if you don't want to be controlled, you should probably have guns. And not wanting to be controlled is not a left or right issue.
It's what our country was founded on, for crying out loud.
Mm-hmm.
It was founded on saying, no, we don't want to, and we're going to fight you. And that's why when people distrust the government, for whatever reason, even if I think it's nonsense, they say, I want to get a gun to protect myself from the government, I go, hell yeah, that's American. Go for it. It's your right. Distrust the government, buy an AR-15 or an AK-47. That's patriotic. America.
And then go find yourself a gun club, go find yourself a sand pit, go find yourself a public range or something like that, and go train with that gun. And just so you know, there is a comorbidity of having a really good time while you're doing it. I was actually listening to a back episode of the Unsubscribed podcast, and they were talking about one of the YouTuber gun days at the Desperado Resort, and they were talking about like some of the YouTube reps showed up for it, and they were like, they had never shot a gun ever, and they're like, oh, why don't you go see Brandon's people? And they're just, these people never shot before, and they're getting full auto weapons like on their first day, and they're just like, this is fun. Like, yeah.
So speaking of such things, this was just announced like 5-6 hours ago, and the Florida governor has announced the Second Amendment summer. And so from Memorial Day to July 4th, all purchases of guns and ammunition will be tax-free.
Isn't that nice?
It absolutely is. But I'm just, when I heard that, I kind of went, oh crap. Because first of all, gosh, that would have been nice earlier when I was buying things. But also, it's kind of like with gamers and the annual, Steam sale. It's just like, oh no, my wallet. Oh no.
And then the angry libertarian in me is like, why are we taxing guns in the first place?
I don't know that they will, but I really hope that the gun stores start having sales, because if the price is right, I might be able to finally pick up that KSG I've wanted for a decade.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Well, I lament for your wallet, but I'm overjoyed for your soul and your psyche if you do get yourself some fine freakish beach plastic.
Hey, I will have you know that the proper term is cocaine cannon.
Isn't that true? Isn't that true? We know how you feel about shotguns. You feel about shotguns the same way I feel about revolvers, and vice versa.
I mean, I know Clint Smith is known best for his love of revolvers. The Smith & Wesson Model 9, I think. I'm horrible with names. But he will forever be associated, in my mind, with shotguns for that one particular... I can't do the impression, but, actually, Weer'd, can you do that?
Well, yes, yeah. Pistols put holes in people. Rifles put holes through people. Shotguns with the right load at the right time will physically remove a chunk of sugar from your opponent.
And throw it on the floor, I think is the rest of it.
Yes, and throw that sugar on the floor.
I actually thought you were going to do your Clint Smith impression.
Oh, yes. Well, I didn't want to get too into it, lest I have to bleep this out.
Oh, fair enough.
Yes,
fair enough.
Pistols put holes in people. Rifles put holes through people. Gotta have that gravel. Because the guy was shot in the throat in Vietnam.
I did't know that.
Yeah,
I just thought he smoked like cartons per day.
Nope. I took a hit in the throat in that. Possibly from an AK-47, because that's one thing he'll say about the. Oh yeah, I know the AK-47. I respect the AK-47. I was shot with an AK-47. I'm trying to find what the I don't know it off the top of my head from with my there it is. Is it the? Yes, specifically the Smith & Wesson Model 58 is the one that he is known for loving to death, because that is the 41 Magnum Smith & Wesson revolver, and he's a lover of 41 Magnum. Talk about hipster calibers. And well, let's switch on to old-timey guns and weird politics. This is a strange ass story. And is very, very, very interesting in the fact that AG Merrick Garland has gone by Felicia, because he knows that his time is numbered with Donald Trump, because the two of them have absolutely no love between the two of them. And in the final days of the Biden administration, they had a big farewell party for Merrick Garland, and in it, the FBI director Christopher Wray awarded him a Tommy gun that he specifically said was shot by FBI agents, and this is all done at the Capitol. And a lot of Second Amendment groups have some questions about this because there's a lot of ways to slice this, and not a lot of them are legal.
You know what really this reminds me of? That when the ATF director Beeplesneets retired, and he was given an 80% ghost gun AR-15 lower receiver as a retirement gift.
Yeah.
And so I have to wonder what's going on in the District of Columbia where they're just handing out these restricted firearms to outgoing politicians. And I mean, of course they're going to get away with it because, you know, they may not be the party in power now, but okay, I'm cynical. I think they're going to get away with it. Anyone else, they would be jacked up and in prison, but these two are going to get away with it. And I just wonder what's going on that they think it's not only appropriate, but funny to give restricted firearms in a location that has highly restrictive gun laws and just think it's cool. Haha.
Yeah. This is like, also, these are like very, very anti-gun people. Like, why are you be like me giving you a classic car, Aaron? Be like, great, what's
Well, the thing is, I'm not anti-classic car.
Yeah, but you don't care for it. Like if I gave you a 61 Cadillac, you'd be like, great, it's a old car that doesn't run well, that I can't just like. You want a car that will get things done. Like if I was to give you just a new like Honda Civic, you would just be like overjoyed. Like, oh look, a new car. Perfect. I have an older car. This is a new one. It's going to work well. I'm going to drive it for years. I'm going to be fine. Versus I'm going to give you an old car. It's going to constantly need work. It's going to constantly need repairs. And for people that like classic cars, like there's people out there, 61 Cadillac, they're just drooling. Like, yeah, you're going to need to replace every gasket on that thing all the time. That's fine. I'll replace all the gaskets. I'll have a 61 Cadillac. But there's other people, like myself included. I appreciate classic cars. I would never want to own one just because I don't like working on cars. And I don't want to just be giving my mechanic my checkbook. Here, you keep this. Trust me, you need it more than I do. You fill out all the checks, and then just when I come to get my car, you just hand me one and tell me to sign it. Endorse this for me, please, sir. I'll keep the checkbook here. I'll keep the balance. I'll keep the balance in the registry good too. Thank you. So yeah, it's one of those like is Steve Diedelbach a shooter? Like I've never heard any evidence. I mean, I haven't heard any evidence that he knows the difference between an AR-15 and an AK-47. I mean, there's like the very, very famous like video of one of the ATF heads trying to field strip a Glock and just couldn't do it. And it was just one of those like, who are these people? Like, I have seen no evidence that they even like guns. Like, what is Merrick Garland going to do with this Thompson submachine gun that maybe it's a replica, maybe not. Either way, there's like anybody else, this would be like the worst gift ever. You know, it would be like giving one of my friends here in Massachusetts who doesn't have a gun license a gun as a gift. They'd be like, oh, now I have to do like a whole bunch of paperwork and a whole bunch of stuff. And there's who gets to keep it? Where does this stay? Like, but again, this is the same people with the David Gregory when he held up the 30-round AR-15 magazine, you know, on, was that Meet the Press? I can't even remember which show it was on. But
I can't remember either.
I just remember that it was David Gregory. I don't even know what network he works for. I don't care. But he held it up, and it's one of those, it was in the DC office, and a bunch of people were like, you were holding up a 30-round magazine. You're not a member of law enforcement. Did you have law enforcement? And I think they openly admitted that there was no custodian for that magazine that could have made that legal. It was completely breaking the law. And they just went, yep, no, it's fine. they're preaching gun control.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's that. If you actively hate guns, we'll let you keep as many guns as you want, and maybe even some guns that you don't want. So, yeah, the law offices of Stephen Stambolia have submitted a Freedom of Information Act about this alleged Tommy gun, on what it is, because it definitely does appear to have like a red plug in the barrel, so it may be based off of a parts kit or all that. And again, they've got some in the article in there. They've quoted some information about how even if this is a replica and it's not a firing gun, there's still a whole lot of nonsense that goes on with possessing it in the District of Columbia. So yeah, it's a weird story. And speaking of weird stories, I couldn't resist this one. This is, of course, one of my favorite issues is let's look in the future, in a future where gun control, the Second Amendment advocates have lost and they've able to get bans. Do you think the people that are taking our guns away will suddenly be happy? And the answer is no. Because
we're watching it happen in real time in the United Kingdom.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. There was a stabbing in Scotland. I think it was last year. I need to cross-reference it. It doesn't say in the article. But there was a person who used a knife and killed 3 people. I think we covered this actually in one of the shows when it happened. But supposedly the person bought the knife on Amazon, and there were already laws in place. Like they were supposed to get a signature and see some ID, but they didn't. And so obviously the UK is doing what the gun banners here do is, I don't know, but this time you now have to do it harder. We're going to pass more laws because the laws that we had didn't work and weren't enforced. So we're going to throw more laws on top of it and pretend like that's going to work.
Yeah. So he bought it. I don't know if he bought it specifically. Oh, here we go. From Amazon. He bought a knife from Amazon and it was delivered, and he used it to kill 3 young girls, and that is awful. And I hope he is punished to the extreme. But now the UK is now. Oh well. I think we've all seen the pictures of like a cutlery set, which includes a rounded butter knife in, I think it's Tesco, their version of Walmart or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And it's safety wrapped, and it's like you have to be, 8, I don't know if it's 18 or 21 or 25, but you have to be an adult to buy this butter knife. And so now anyone purchasing a knife online is going to have to provide a copy of their photo ID along with proof of their address, and then you'll need to show your ID again when the package is delivered. So
there we go. I have found the current status of UK knife control, and it's a Thomas the Tank Engine flatware set of a fork, a spoon, and a butter knife. Again, this is toddler stuff. It's all rounded, big fat tines on the fork, and it says no ID, no sale. You actually need to be 18 to buy this set of flatware for a very young child, for someone who would sit in a high chair. And so yeah, it's absolutely ridiculous. And again, they have banned guns so much that they really don't see any need to banning any more guns. And hey, guess what? They've also banned violence, but that doesn't seem to stop it. And they have a violent crime problem. Like they've always had a violent crime problem, and just they're preferring to use knives now. And that's fine because nobody has guns and nobody has knives either. So you go to get stabbing people, you're the only one doing the stabbing. And yeah, so they're just going on. And again, this is just like cutlery. And again, the UK kitchens are no different than ours. They still have, you can still buy knives. So you need to be 18 to buy knives for your kitchen. You can go and get yourselves a full line of Henkel's butcher knives and chef knives and utility knives and all that. And I mean, anyone who's watched any slasher horror movies from the 80s or 90s know, Friday the 13th, what's he got? He's just using a carving knife. So it is so dumb, and it's insane that they think that this is going to work.
So back here in the United States, where gun laws are somewhat sensible, this comes to us courtesy of Colion Noir, who posted it 2 days ago as of Monday, the 3rd of February. And there is a video that's been taken. I assume it's from sort of home security footage of a bedroom shootout with home invaders in Michigan. And it's not like it's super bloody, but when you realize that people have been shot and they're crying out in pain, it's difficult to watch. But what happened was you have a man and his girlfriend who had just gotten back from a vacation, and 2 armed burglars, I guess you would say, broke in. There was
actually the man and a girlfriend who lived in the apartment, and a friend who was sleeping on the couch.
Oh, okay. See, I knew that there was a third guy, and I didn't know what was going on.
Yeah, he was. They'd all come back from a vacation, and he was crashing on their couch to probably just to rest up from the travels before he continued on to wherever he lived. And
so the intruders, had come in, and they were shouting at the guest. They had him proned out on the floor, and stay there, don't move. And so the homeowner heard this happening, and he gets a gun. And Colion thinks it's a 1911. I didn't get a good enough look. And so he knows that there's an intruder in the house, and he figures that they're going to go to his room. And so he gets his gun ready, and he stands there, waits for them to open the door, and then they exchange fire. Mm-hmm. The bad news is that man is hit, and also his girlfriend, who was sleeping in the bed, was hit. Everyone lived. The man had bandaged foot. I'm not really clear how he got shot in the foot, but weird things happen. The girlfriend got shot in the back, and there's still a piece of bullet that's lodged in her chest because it came in at an angle, and they may not be able to remove it because of how deep it is. And so I know how hollow it is to say our thoughts and prayers are with her, but it's like I can't do anything else. Mm-hmm. But I'm concerned about her health, and I hope she recovers. And even the home intruder that was shot lived. And while I am personally disappointed with that, the young man, the homeowner, said he was glad. And okay, good. You don't have to deal with the emotional trauma of killing someone in self-defense. I will have to say that I giggled very inappropriately when I saw the shot home invader trying to leave the house with at least one leg that isn't working too good.
Yeah, I was honestly legit surprised that he ended up surviving that. It looked like he was mortally wounded and trying to get away. I've definitely seen people crawling like that who didn't make it very far. So yeah, and I think it's worthwhile to also say that the person who was doing the shooting knew the intruder. They had a previous relationship, so this was definitely a targeted attack. Mm-hmm. And
I don't know why they didn't do it while they were on vacation.
Yeah, if I had to guess, I would guess that, especially given how weird, because the stuff that they were stealing wasn't worth a whole ton. So honestly, if I had to guess, and I think it'd be pretty safe to guess, I bet it was a friendship that had gone sour due to drugs. And
okay,
and they maybe didn't know that they were gone, or thought that they were still gone, or who knows. But you said I want to put this in there. I hadn't put it in there. I was debating to put it into the show notes. You said so. I'm like, oh, perfect. I had a thought for it. Is Colion Noir does a great breakdown of it and points out the fact that he's not trying to throw any shade. And, in the end, things worked out at least somewhat favorably, but there's a lot of bad stuff that did happen. Obviously, I think he's a renter, but the renter got shot. His girlfriend, who was in the bed, got shot. The intruder got shot. I don't care. And all that, but he was pointing out the fact that the guy is holding the pistol in a completely, improvised grip, and gives the impression that he hasn't spent a whole lot of time on the firing line or shooting a gun at all. So step one, practice. Get your reps in, get comfortable with that gun in your hand. Step two is the fact that he was just right there, framed in the doorway, just waiting for the guy to come, which, maybe seems to make sense, but like, it looked like there was some space behind the bed there. If he could have gotten behind the bed's not going to be.
Gee, how about he wakes his sleeping girlfriend and gets her off the bed and behind it, out of the line of fire? That was my first thought. The second thought was, instead of being in front of the door, to be to the side, if at all possible. I mean, at least at a diagonal, so that you could shoot at the intruder without the intruder seeing you, at least at first. Yeah. Those were the two things that jumped out. But also, you can see it in the screen cap at the beginning. He's got this really strange grip. It looks like his support hand. Well, first, okay, he's not teacupping in the traditional way. It's like his support hand is teacupping the lower receiver of the pistol.
Yeah, it's almost like he's holding it like it's a like an AR pistol.
Yeah,
where he's got his hand on the foreend, where he's got his hand underneath the dust cover of the pistol. And honestly speaking, I was surprised the gun kept working, because if you hold a gun like that, there's a good chance that you may end up riding the slide and causing a malfunction.
Yeah. But I mean, as he's shooting, it looks like he has problems controlling it. And well, maybe it's because he's under fire. Maybe it's because he's getting shot. But I do have to wonder if a better grip on the pistol would have allowed him better control, and allowed him more follow-on shots rather than having to fight the recoil and the muzzle rise.
Yeah. But the key takeaway that Colion brings in there, and what I think really needs to be repeated, is that if you keep a firearm in the home for home defense, you absolutely need to have a game plan on what happens in that instance, and in what happens in that instance, and the and also let the other people in the home know. For my house, it's my wife and my daughter, so they need to. And honestly speaking, I should probably, it's been a little while since we've talked about it. I should talk about it in the fact that, some things have changed in the original sense of, we originally talked about it the last, when my daughter was small, and the idea that, like, my wife could barricade in the bedroom and I could go in and just collect her with a pistol in my hand and be just fine. And but now that my daughter's larger and all that, it might be better for me to stand guard while my wife collects the daughter and we all get together in the house. Don't have the which is a great idea. Clint Smith recommends you have a piece of paper with a map of at least the first floor of your house on it. And on that is a ring with a key to the house and a glow stick, so that when the police show up, you crack the glow stick and throw it outside. And there is a glowing piece of paper with a map of the first floor and a key, so they don't have to kick down your door, and they can come in, and they are now at a tactical advantage. That's a great one to have. But have a plan. Have a plan. Don't think that you could come up with a plan, especially if you're not living alone, like on the fly, because you don't want to be coming up with, all right, now what do I do when glass is breaking?
I have a question. Okay, so you've got the key ring with the key, the glow stick, and the map of the house. And I understand that you're throwing it out for the police, but why are you throwing it out for the police that you can't let them in? I feel, when you answer this, I know I'm going to feel dumb, but I feel like I'm missing something important here.
Well, I will tell you right now. But so my house has is 3 stories tall, and our bedroom's on the 2nd floor. And part of the plan is we are on that 2nd floor until the 1st floor is cleared by either the police, or time has gone on long enough that I am strongly concerned that whoever was there is gone, or it's a false alarm and there was never anybody there.
Yeah, and the moment you said 2nd floor, I figured it out. Yeah. So you're defending the 2nd floor and you're throwing that out for the police. Okay, now I understand. See, I'm coming from a position where I've lived in Florida for so long and nearly all of the houses are single floor. And it's just like, what is this accomplishing? All right, cultural difference. I get it now.
Yeah, no, that is a great point. But yeah, no, another bit of Clint Smith advice. He says the only way to clear a stairwell is to get on a radio and call in a JDAM, and absolutely is. I mean, I mentioned with the Nashville shooting, the police getting up onto the 2nd floor of that school with the badges and just seeing just all those angles where if the shooter is waiting for them, they could shoot at the cops before the cops could get a chance to see them. Stairwells are terrifying, and I plan on taking good advantage of that. Look, you stay down there and be just fine, and we'll let the cops come and arrest you. You come up these stairs, and also another part of my plan is the lights go on. I want them to know that this place is occupied. And the lights go on. It'll also help illuminate them. And if they try to come anywhere near my family, they get what they deserved. So that is part of our hotel. And so the idea being that, all right, maybe they broke a window and came in, so all the doors are still locked, or something like that. The police can still gain access with a key, and that glow stick is a helper.
Yeah.
It also might work too if you're on a large single floor house, you might be on one side of the house where there is, there might be bad guys between you and one of the nearest doors. So to be able to throw it out a window. But in theory, you could also just jump out the window yourself. Or maybe
that's exactly what I was going to say. Yeah. If you can throw it out, then you can evacuate. Well, I mean, if you're able-bodied.
That's true.
Yeah. Okay, I think we have talked this one to death.
Yes. And so one last one, and I think it works out as a great transition to the first segment, is another story from Tom Knighton over at Bearing Arms, and the title is "This is Why There Are No Reasonable Conversations on Mandatory Storage Laws." And it is, I'm not going to go too deep into the article, but essentially it's a professor from Yale University writing for The Progressive, and essentially talking about a shooting in Nashville that I thought about covering in the show, but the manifesto got released and the person was so crazy that I'm just like, this isn't really an issue for us here. Yeah, it was a shooting. They shot a single person and it was bad, but I don't know. This is just, it didn't seem like it was in the scope for this, but they were using it as a means to push for secure gun storage laws, which I will note that Heller versus DC has stated is unconstitutional, but it sure hasn't stopped the anti-gunners from asking for more of it. And essentially, Tom does a great job at digging into their own references to point out the fact that they are citing a lot of stuff that just isn't true or is just paper thin logic, and just noting that this is the bad faith arguments made by people proposing gun control, and it really just shows that there really isn't any rationing with them.
I do like that the author pointed out that there's a middle ground that people on both sides are happy with, and that would be a tax credit for gun safes.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't speak for everyone, but yeah, I would absolutely be happy with it. As someone who has saved up in order to buy gun storage lockers, yeah, I would absolutely love a tax credit to have more secure storage for my guns.
Yeah,
I think that's great.
It's absolutely great. Yeah, and anything that can be done, we could also, in theory, have a, like a scholarship, something that where people that could demonstrate that we have guns, but we're in need, and we're of minimum need, because there's absolutely people who we've inherited guns, we've gone through, we've got some cheap ones. And we were able to get the guns, and maybe we're able to get some ammo for training, but we're not able to get anything for secure storage. And so, I mean, that's, Tom points out the fact that the locks that are come with the guns aren't very good, and no, they're limited. And obviously, you can go to any police station anywhere in the country, and the Project Child Safe locks are there, and those are actually pretty decent. I mean, you could pick them pretty easy, and no lock is invincible to brute force attacks and things like that. But they're pretty decent. They're pretty decent locks, and will work out well. Obviously, a trigger lock or a cable lock is not going to do a great job at storing anything. Though again, the Project Child Safe locks, you could in theory loop the before you lock it, loop it around something solid. Like you could do like a, I don't know if there was like a cabinet or something, you could loop it around like a part of the furniture or something like that. I don't know. But yeah, I'm with all that. Like, yeah, I don't think there's anybody that's really opposed to safe storage laws. I think there's just a lot of people who are opposed to the mandates, and people who don't know you, who think you know better.
Well, that, and also a lot of these safe storage laws are thinly veiled attempts to bypass getting a warrant. The police have to come in and check and make sure that your guns are locked up safely.
Yeah, that's true.
No officer, get a warrant.
Yeah, make sure and by making sure that your guns are locked up safely, making sure that the guns are there. So maybe also getting a little bit of a registry of your firearms as well.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah, but I mean, it's one of those, like, yeah, there's times when I am staying in a hotel room either by myself or with my wife. And in that case, there's two of us. We're both gun owners. We're both people that know how to safely handle guns. Yeah, I'll just throw a loaded gun in my bedside table. I don't care. There's nobody who's supposed to be in this room that's not someone who's more than capable of handling a loaded firearm. And my wife knows that, yeah, no, it's not an unloaded gun. That gun is loaded. And so, yeah, and people will do that sort of stuff. If you're someone who either has older kids who are all shooters, or live alone and don't have many young things, do you need to lock everything up? Yeah, there's some level of security. What if someone breaks in while you're not there and steals all your guns? A safe helps with that. But the acting like they know better for you. There are perfectly reasonable times when someone would have an unsecured and loaded firearm in their home that's not irresponsible. And so to say that all guns that aren't directly on your person need to be locked up at all times is presumptive.
Well, like me, I live in the house with my 85-year-old mother and our dog. We don't have children running around. Mom doesn't carry anymore, but she understands gun safety, and honestly, she's not likely to touch any of mine unless it's a life or death situation, in which case I want her to.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I can absolutely leave my carry gun out, and I've got it here now within a couple of feet of me, because I've got a magnet attached to the metal leg of my computer desk. So, I'm spending a lot of time here working on the computer. In case I hear a bump, I can just grab it.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, it's not locked up, but it's under my control because I'm around it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it's absolutely agree. And yeah, it's a good article. I am just glossing over it because there's just so many facts and he really breaks it down beautifully. And so by all means, go over to Bearing Arms and read this story and also follow it over to the original piece because check the, check the original sources and check what they're citing. And yeah, it's some good research.
But what about bad research, Weer'd?
What about bad research? Speaking of people of science and lying to push an agenda, I stumbled upon an old video with my old friend, Dr. Arthur Kellermann, who is a pioneer of junk science for gun control. During the inauguration of President Trump, a lot of people were talking about the politically charged sermon at the National Cathedral done by Bishop Buddy. However you feel about what she said, I heard she was a proponent of gun control, and with her name in the news, I thought it'd be a great time to track her down and Fisk her points. I failed, but one video I did stumble on was a 2013 event at the cathedral hosted by the bishop, where several gun ban advocates spoke in the wake of the Sandy Hook shooting. There was the current mayor of Minneapolis, the chief of the DC police, but the name that stopped me dead in my tracks, Dr. Arthur Kellermann. If you've been following me for any bit of time, I've spent a ton of time debunking this guy's horrible studies on gun violence. Links are in the show notes. It's been ages since I've seen a video of the man, so I had to do it, despite the fact that it's a 12-year-old clip.
For those who notice that the cadence of my speech is somewhat different than the prior two speakers, allow me to introduce myself and explain a little bit about my background, because whenever you hear people talk about guns or gun violence or gun control, it's important to know where they come from. It's important to know what perspective they represent. So first of all, I'm a Southerner, born and raised in East Tennessee, and like many young Tennesseans, was taught to shoot at a very young age by my father. I was also taught that owning and keeping a firearm is a tremendous responsibility you can never take lightly, and I've never forgotten it.
I didn't even know he was a Southerner. Still, this is an appeal to authority. I live in Massachusetts, so you can assume I'm a gun banner. Oh, but Weer'd, you're from Maine. To which I note that I'm from Portland, Maine. And trust me, the recent gun control laws in Maine got their traction there. Him being from Tennessee and knowing how to shoot and the responsibilities of gun ownership isn't the flex he's expecting, because that just means he should know better than to peddle all of what we're about to cover.
I'm also an ER doc, and for 25 years, I worked in inner city public hospital emergency rooms supporting level 1 trauma centers in Seattle, Washington, later Memphis, Tennessee, Atlanta, Georgia, and then recently I moved to Washington, D.C. Over that time period, I know I treated, and my colleagues treated, hundreds of victims of gun violence, suicide attempts, and accidental shootings.
So he's an ER doc in major cities. So likely he learned that it wasn't the average concealed carry holder or self-defense enthusiast that was showing up with bullet holes. It wasn't even people who could legally own guns. Further, he should know that suicide isn't a factor of gun ownership, but of emotional issues that need treatment. Though I will add that Dr. Kellermann did author a horrible paper claiming that guns cause suicide. Link in the show notes of my Fisk on that one.
I know firsthand the damage that a firearm in the wrong hands or used in the wrong manner, what it can do.
So this is a fun little fallacy. We hear anti-gun doctors talking about how bullets from AR-15s can shatter bones, because most of us have never seen trauma victims. Still, what do you think Dr. Kellermann saw breaking more bones and changing more lives? Gunshot wounds or car accident? I think most of us know somebody who was either killed in a car accident or had a life-changing injury in one. We don't talk about banning cars. We talk about education, and maybe for things like drunk driving, more policing. Why don't we suggest similar things with guns?
Third, I am a public health researcher. I'm one of those odd ER docs that actually thinks that the best way to prevent a life-threatening emergency is not to let it happen in the first place.
And this is why he's here today. Dr. Kellermann's research is synonymous with politically motivated junk science. He was so unethical with his abuse of scientific journals, he changed the landscape of the field forever.
And for the most of that 25 years, I also did a lot of the most significant public health research on gun injury prevention, and was one of the docs that so upset the National Rifle Association in the late 90s that they had managed to pressure Congress into essentially shutting down the CDC's capacity to do gun prevention research. And let that one sink in for a moment. The most respected public health agency in the world was told, you can no longer fund science on understanding how to prevent gunshot injuries.
This is a common theme we'll be seeing here. Dr. Kellermann is a hero in his own eyes. So yeah, he's claiming the NRA viewed him as such a threat that they wrote laws against him. Instead, in reality, Dr. Kellermann's research was so dishonest and so driven by an agenda that violated the Second Amendment that laws were passed to keep public funds from being used for such partisan propaganda. And the law didn't say the CDC couldn't fund research on gun injuries. Instead, it said that it couldn't fund research on gun control. And just like that, the gun studies stopped because they were never conducted in good faith.
That prohibition was put in place in 1997, and it exists to this day. And we have not had the kind of science to help us make smart policy choices going forward, or to make smart choices as individuals about what we want to do in our own homes, because the flow of research findings was shut off in the late 90s.
Except in 2013, the same year this talk was given, President Obama commissioned a CDC study of gun violence and found that defensive gun uses were more common than gun violence. And Dr. Kellermann's research that said that guns were more likely to harm the owner of a gun than defend them was false. The president didn't like this. So once the study was published, the press gave it a good leaving alone and didn't revisit the issue.
Now, when Sandy Hook happened, I was at my office in Rand and had really left this issue behind several years ago, in part because there was no point. You couldn't get funding to do research. But I did feel drawn back to it like many of you did. And I sat down and I wrote out what I thought were some of the early and even now important lessons from Newtown, Sandy Hook Elementary, and the challenge that we face in this country. And I just want to briefly offer those to you.
He couldn't get funding because he was a known fraud. But let's hear what this trusted source has to say.
Lesson number one, the weapon matters. The same day that shooter killed 6 teachers and 20 first graders in Newtown, a deranged farmer in the Hunan province of China attacked a school of kids with a knife and slashed 22 children. Some of them were seriously injured. None of them died. The weapon matters.
Except that attacks like this only happen in gun-free zones. And in 2016, there was a truck attack in Nice, France that killed 86 people and injured over 400. Yeah, the weapon matters.
You know where he got those guns? From the first victim, who kept those guns for sport shooting, but also for protection. But they didn't protect her that day. She was killed by her son, who then took her assault rifle and her handguns to the school. The weapon matters. And because he had that rifle, I really believe he was able to maintain a pace of fire. He did not have to take much time to reload, and he could aim far better than an inexperienced young shooter could have with a Glock 10 millimeter or a 9 millimeter 6 Sauer. He just could not have maintained that rate of fire.
Except for the Virginia Tech shooter was less experienced, as his family hadn't taught him how to shoot like the Sandy Hook shooter had. And he killed more people using a .22 pistol and a 9 millimeter, and both had only 10-round magazines. The facts never support Dr. Kellermann. Also, remember that part where he said the guns didn't protect her? Never mind that she was shot in her sleep by her own son. Keep that in mind.
Second key lesson. While this may be hard to understand, we really need to learn what went right in Newtown, not just what went wrong. And you know what? As bizarre as that sounds, some things went right. The courage of a 5'2" principal and a handful of school officials saved the lives of children. They confronted the shooter, they slowed him down, they gave their lives to protect those kids.
Now, the principal and teacher's selfless acts are to be praised. They were still killed, and this was still one of the most deadly shootings in U.S. history. Why was the killer's mom chided for thinking that guns would protect her, but not the teachers for thinking the Gun-Free School Zone Act would? We have seen many instances where rapid armed response from police, teachers, and bystanders that quickly put an end to the killing. But Dr. Kellermann doesn't want to talk about that because it doesn't fit his agenda.
The second thing that happened were other teachers demonstrated tremendous judgment. They didn't run out into the hall. They didn't try to flee the building and go through a free fire zone. They locked down doors. They hid their kids in classrooms. They made them quiet. They waited the shooter out. They saved lives. Lockable doors in that school building saved lives.
This I won't argue with. And possibly, if the doors were working in Uvalde, maybe we wouldn't even know the name of that small town in Texas. Lockdowns, if done correctly, work. But they also increase the casualties if the shooter can gain access, because the people will be tightly packed together.
And finally, a very fast 911 response by the local police department saved lives. When the shooter heard the sirens and knew the police were coming, he turned the gun on himself instead of killing more kids.
Police response is important. We know that attacks in places like Parkland, Pulse nightclub, and Uvalde, the deaths were massive because the police delayed their response. But also, the mere presence of another gun triggered the shooter to kill himself. He was there because he knew he would be the only gun there. The moment there was a chance of bullets flying his way, he ended his own life. What do you think would have happened if one of those brave teachers had something more than just using their bodies as a human shield?
As great as that 911 response was, it will never be fast enough. We have got to do a better job of preventing shootings, not just reacting to them after the fact.
And of course, the CDC study showed that one great way to prevent shootings is not to be defenseless and not to be in a gun-free zone.
The final thing I would offer is this: don't despair. Don't feel impotent. Don't say that the gun lobby is too powerful or nobody really cares or after a week we all go back to our daily lives. What's the point anyway? It's just going to happen.
And whatever you do, don't take personal responsibility for your safety and the safety of your family. This is 2013. Dr. Kellermann knows that the most extensive gun ban in U.S. history happened in 1994, the federal assault weapons ban, and it did nothing for violent crime. Plus, the same year, the Gun-Free School Zone Act was passed, and school shootings went from a rare occurrence to a political buzzword, and that states with the highest gun control laws are often the least safe. But he's going to push for gun control instead of common sense solutions.
And also, don't believe there is not a sane center in this argument. There is. Even with people that you don't think so. If we can get the screaming voices away from the microphones and TV cameras and engage with gun owners, with hunters, with docs, with cops, with citizens, with the clergy, we can come up with answers.
Ironically said in an Episcopal church with an anti-gun bishop on a panel with people who advocated for gun control in one of the most anti-gun cities in America with one of the highest violent crime rates in the nation. There is a sane center, but this event is the lunatic fringe.
And let me explain. I'll give you one quick example why, a little story. In 1999, 6 months after the massacre at Columbine, a college classmate of mine, now a very successful doctor, invited me to come to his town to talk about guns as a public health issue. Dr. Ted Eastburn had run and been elected to the city council of Colorado Springs a while earlier, and he thought this would be a really good idea. Now, trust me, 6 months after Columbine, go to Colorado, talk about guns in one of the most conservative cities in America. I don't know who was more naive, him for inviting me or me for saying yes.
Note that Dr. Kellermann is an unreliable narrator and has already lied about his past.
Before I got there, the NRA heard I was coming, and they sent a blast fax to the membership of the state. Now, some of you still remember what a blast fax was. It's kind of like a tweet, but papers involved in a machine. So the night that I was to give this little homily of sorts, in an auditorium that had been the former county commission chambers with steep banked arena, 300 seats, 900 NRA members from all over Colorado showed up to, quote, stop Kellermann from bringing East Coast-style gun control to Colorado Springs. Every seat was full of NRA guys with bumper stickers, signs of Hitler and Mussolini, 2 advocates for gun control, and, it was almost like a lynch mob. And I thought, gee, I never thought I'd be killed for giving a lecture, but it could happen tonight. The police chief said, here's the tunnel you dive into. We have plainclothes cops in the room. It was surreal.
The NRA sent out info on Dr. Kellermann because he's a notorious liar and an anti-gun propagandist who masquerades as a scientist. And he compared the 2A activists to a lynch mob, despite no anti-gun activists ever being the target of political violence. Classy, Doc.
But I thought, what the hell? I'm here, and they have a chance to listen. So I started by introducing myself. I said to you, Southerner, ER doc, public health guy. But I remember that phrase about stop Kellermann from bringing East Coast-style gun control. So I said, y'all are from the West, I'm from the South. Let me tell you how I knew that after I'd trained up there in Seattle, how I knew that I was back home when I got to Memphis. It's when I drove up behind a car at an intersection that had a bumper sticker on the back, and it said, and I quote, we don't give a damn how you did it up north. And I said, and friends, I know you don't give a damn how we do it back east. Roar! The crowd goes nuts.
He wasn't really afraid because he knew these weren't the people doing the shootings in the inner cities. Also, ironically, Colorado has since become an anti-gun state, and it was West Coast gun control that did that. And there have been many spree killings in Colorado since that happened.
And I said, so let's just talk for a while. And I proceeded to talk about personal responsibility, safe storage, the idea that you wouldn't have a $5,000 necklace on a peg on your wall and walk out the door. Why would you leave your father's shotgun or a rifle on a peg on the wall? You'd put it in a safe.
Except people do put jewelry in unlocked jewelry boxes, and nobody locks up their big screen TVs or designer clothes when they go out. And if you want to say because guns are dangerous, they're different, people also don't lock up their kitchen knives, cleaning chemicals, or their power tools either. Hey, Doc, how many people have you sewn up from kitchen or power tool injuries? How many kids did you treat for ingesting household chemicals?
I talked about the fact that I didn't think anybody in that room wanted a bunch of gangbangers driving up and down the main drag of Colorado Springs with a sawed-off shotgun under the front seat or a Tech 9. They're kind of nodding. They're like, do I clap or not? What am I supposed to do, Bob? They didn't know what to think.
Because he's talking nonsense. Gangbangers are often felons, which means that they can't own guns. Sawed-off shotguns are NFA items, so they're under further restrictions. A Tech 9, well, it can be describing a simple 9mm pistol. There were early open-bolt Tech 9s that were easily converted to full auto, which is also illegal. Oh, and in Colorado, one of the Columbine shooters used a ban-compliant Tech 9 pistol. He got it illegally from his girlfriend, who went to a gun show and passed the background checks despite what the propaganda says, with a shopping list for her underage felon boyfriend. She was never charged with these crimes because she helped usher in gun control in Colorado. Because gun banners would rather see gun control than actually enforce the law.
And finally, I talked about the research that I had done in prior years that showed that actually having a loaded, readily available gun in your home increases your risk of violent death, doesn't reduce it. And they got kind of nasty at that point, started growling again. I said, now, wait a minute. I didn't shoot them. All I did was count them. So just listen to it, hear me out.
They got nasty because that was in the NRA fact sheet. Dr. Kellermann cherry-picked his study to high-crime areas where carry permits were illegal or difficult to attain, and made zero controls for criminal activity or if the gun was legally owned. So he counted a drug dealer with a stolen gun who was shot by a rival gang as the same as a lawful gun owner with a carry permit who killed themselves or a family member. And this garbage study was used as justification for the massive amounts of gun bans that were passed in the 1990s. Can you blame them for being upset by this?
This was the remarkable part of this story. At the end of the evening, they actually applauded. Now, I won't claim they got a standing ovation, but they did applaud. And more importantly, about 30 of the people who had come there to run me out of town lined up and shook my hand. And one of those hardcore NRA guys said, "You know what, Doc? We were lied to about you. You're all right. I can agree with 95% of what you said tonight. I'm not sure about that home stuff, but the rest of it, I think you're spot on." And I said, "It's America. I call that a win." That is the sane center.
Or maybe they applauded because that's the polite thing to do after a speech. Maybe they shook your hand for the same reason. And frankly, maybe the person who thought that this liar made some good points was gullible and ignorant. Or maybe he was one of those undercover cops you mentioned earlier. Or maybe Dr. Kellermann is the hero and I'm the villain. Never mind the show notes, which are mostly past shows, because they have many useful references in their respective show notes. But what do I know?
Now, this story does have a sad ending. My friend Ted, cardiologist, started the heart transplant program at Vanderbilt with Bill Frist before Senator Frist went to the Congress and he went to Colorado Springs. Well, about 8 years after this remarkable night, Ted's life took a tragic turn. His then 22-year-old adopted son, Teddy, shot and killed himself, a suicide. He was in the Army. He had volunteered at age 17. He was on the verge after a tour in Iraq. He was about to be deployed to Afghanistan, and he took his life. It devastated Ted. 3 years later, my friend shot and killed himself. In his doctor's office, in the morning, the staff found him, and they found the gun.
Frankly, I find it disgusting that Kellermann frames this story of an alleged friend as a call for gun control, rather than what I think any adjusted person would think. We had been at war since 2001 and 2013, and until the 2021 withdrawal, we remained at war. That's a lot of people touched by brutal combat, and a lot of PTSD experienced by some badass fighters who might not be great about asking for help. But rather than talking about ways to help these heroes in need, instead Dr. Kellermann uses it as a stump for gun control, because he's a heartless ghoul. He then made a matter-of-fact talk of his alleged friend ending his life in a doctor's office. That seems like a peculiar place for that to happen. And Kellermann's a physician himself. Could it possibly be that his friend was diagnosed with a terminal illness? Maybe chronic pain with an uncertain treatment. Was it a mental health clinician? None of this is important to Dr. Kellermann. Just that he used a gun. So maybe if guns were banned, everything would be sunshine and roses. This is really disgusting, and the lack of empathy here takes my breath away.
Think about this. Over the last 20 years, the rate of fatal car crashes in the United States has gone down 31%. The rate of deaths in house fires has gone down 38%. And we have cut drownings in America in half. And you know what? We didn't ban automobiles, swimming pools, or matches. But we were smart. We identified and implemented strategies that work. We came together as a country and we made a difference. Reducing 30,000 firearm fatalities by 30% would be quite a win. We can do it if we have the courage and the will. Thank you.
Does he not know that gun death had been reduced by half in the last 20 years before he gave this talk? Maybe he does, but he doesn't want to admit that in that time, concealed carry became legal in all 50 states, and the Supreme Court finally recognized the Second Amendment as an individual right. And the 1994 assault weapons ban catalyzed the interest in modern sporting rifles as everyday practical guns. Maybe he didn't realize it because he got drummed out of the industry for peddling fraudulent studies on gun violence to violate human rights. And honestly, this is one of the few clips of him talking out there, so he likely fled the scene again after this event. Dr. Kellermann's name is synonymous with dishonesty, and I'm glad he no longer has the ear of America. Those are your anti-gun talking points and a few rebuttals to combat them.
That's the first time I'd heard him, and I was really surprised to find out that he was Southern, and then he was using that as a basis of authority.
Well, I I had thought that was the first time I'd ever heard his voice, but I realized I was re-listening to some of my earlier Fisks, and I was actually listening to the first one I've got linked in the show notes after the original video that is from the Gunblog Variety Cast. And in that one, I realized that Fisk actually did have him talking a little bit in it, though it was mostly his co-author. So yeah, I had heard him before. I'd completely forgotten about it because it had been ages. And of course, this is an old video, but I was just one of those I couldn't resist.
So Weer'd. In that same vein of can't resist, pressure pushing down on me, pressing down on you. Listeners ask for cartridge pressure.
Hi, and welcome to Gun Lovers and Other Strangers. There are many different ways cartridges can be categorized, even in the same caliber. Projectile weight, velocity, and muzzle energy are three most people are familiar with. One that's often overlooked, even by experienced shooters, is pressure. So in this segment, I'd like to talk about cartridge pressure, how it's measured, and some warning signs to watch out for. In the early days of metallic cartridges, there was very little standardization. Frequently, this even extended to case dimensions, preventing interchangeability of ammunition between manufacturers. This was one of the reasons early makers of firearms also marketed ammunition under their names. It assured consumers the two products would properly work together. As with many industries, things started to shake out and standardize. By World War I, the different manufacturers of firearms and ammunition had come to a certain amount of agreement, but there was still room for improvement. Formed in 1926, the Sporting Arms and Ammunition Manufacturers Institute, more commonly known as SAAMI, was intended to be that improvement. SAAMI's mission was to be a storehouse of information for standardization in the design and manufacture of ammunition. This included keeping thorough records on the dimensions, specifications, and performance of most commercial and some military cartridges. One of these details was the maximum average pressure, or MAP, for any particular load. If a manufacturer agreed to abide by SAAMI standards, they were also pledging not to exceed these pressure limits. Nearly all domestic American ammunition manufacturers, as well as a number of foreign ones, signed on to this guarantee. When SAAMI was founded, cartridge pressure was determined using copper units of pressure, or cup. In this method, a small hole was drilled in the chamber of a test gun and a carefully calibrated piston was fixed into the hole. When the test gun was fired, the piston would strike a precisely sized copper slug. The amount of compression from this impact would be measured, and this value was then used to calculate the chamber pressure developed by that cartridge. Later, due to technological advances, the system was changed to one utilizing an electrical transducer mounted in the chamber wall. This allowed for more precise measurements, which were now calculated in pounds per inch, or PSI, instead of cup. Some situations where this information is essential is either when modifying an existing firearm to take a different chambering, or when developing a new cartridge entirely. For example, say I wanted to rechamber an already bubbled Milsurp Mauser 98K. This rifle was originally chambered in 8mm Mauser. The two important details about this cartridge for my theoretical project are its overall length and maximum average pressure. According to SAAMI, the 8mm Mauser cartridge is just over 3 inches in length and has a maximum average pressure of 37,000 cup or 35,000 psi. Any cartridge that doesn't exceed either of these values will both fit the action length and be safe to fire. 7mm Remington Magnum is both too long at just over 3 1/4 inches and dangerously over pressure at 52,000 cup or 61,000 psi. 308 Winchester, with a maximum overall length of slightly more than 2 3/4 inches, would fit the action. However, it has a maximum average pressure similar to 7mm Remington Magnum. It wouldn't be a safe choice for this conversion. In contrast, 4570 Government, at approximately 2 1/2 inches long and 28,000 cup and psi, would meet both requirements. This example doesn't consider all the other work required to convert a firearm from one chambering to another. I'm only focusing on overall length and pressure here. Looking at pistols, 9mm, 40 Smith & Wesson, and 357 SIG are all close to the same overall length and pressure. This is why many handguns can fire all 3 cartridges with at most a barrel, magazine, and recoil spring swap. Loads marked +P are higher pressure cartridges, usually around a 10% increase over the standard load for that caliber. There is currently no SAMI specification or standardization for +P+ loads. Another place knowledge of ammunition pressure is important is when reloading. Many people will try to wring the last few feet per second of velocity out of a cartridge. However, this comes with the risk of exceeding safe pressure limits. There are several warning signs that a load is approaching this point. The condition of the primer after firing is one of them. If the primer appears flattened or looks like it was starting to flow out from the primer pocket, that's a potential sign of overpressure. If the firing pin pierces the primer entirely, allowing gases to vent into the action, that's usually a clear warning that things are too hot. Difficult extraction, where the case seems to stick in the chamber, is another possible sign of high-pressure loads, as are split cases or head separation. While all of these warnings may have other causes, it's better to be safe than sorry. If reloads are showing signs of overpressure, ease back on the load a little. A few more feet per second isn't worth damaging the gun or injuring the shooter. As I've mentioned before, Elmer Keith blew up a lot of guns due to overpressure loads when developing the .357 and .44 Magnums. While he was certainly a trailblazer, this probably isn't an example any of us should follow. Have fun and safe shooting. That about wraps up this segment. If you have any questions for me or suggestions for future segments or a comment on a past segment, please post them on the Assorted Calibers Podcast Facebook or MeWe pages, and Aaron or Weer'd will make sure I see them. I'm also a contributor on the Blue Collar Prepping blog, which can be found at bluecollarprepping.blogspot.com. Finally, I'm a published author, and books with my stories can be found on Amazon under the names Brenna Bach and David Bach. That's all for now. Thanks for listening. I'm David, and this is Gun Lovers and Other Strangers.
Oh, God, David. Now I just so much want a Mauser action carbine in 4570 and maybe with a rotary magazine. And also, David didn't include it in the show notes, but I have a clip from Forgotten Weapons where he reviews, I think it was at the James Julia auction house. They sold a cylinder for a single action army that was owned by Elmer Keith, and he was hot loading some 45 Colts and went a little too far and blowed up that that single action army right proper. And this is the reason why the Elmer Keith cartridge was 44 Magnum and not 45 Magnum, because after that he started messing around with 44 Special single action armies because the cylinder wall was just a little bit thicker.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, he was a different fella. His it's one of those, like, when he was developing 357 Magnum, he essentially was getting like Smith & Wesson Model 10s shooting 38 special cartridges, but they were loaded so hot that they were essentially 357 Magnum coming out the barrel, and was doing all that in guns that were in no way, shape, or form rated for that powerful of a cartridge.
So when Elmer Keith died, did he have all of his fingers?
You know what? I don't know, but also Elmer Keith was badly burned as a child, so he was pretty messed up for pretty much all of his life in one way or another. So I don't know. I don't think he did lose any fingers. I mean, certainly that with revolvers, when they blow up, they tend to blow up straight up because the gun's firing from the 12 o'clock position. Yeah, that's. Yeah, I think he had ended up having them all.
That's an accomplishment, considering how he hot loaded those guns. Wow, it reminds me of a song, and I'm looking it up right now. But it was a comedy song, and it was done in the style of an Irish ballad. And when the song starts out, 10-finger Johnny on the first day of July, you know, if they feel the need to tell you how many fingers he had at the beginning, it's not going to go well for Johnny.
I just posted in, if you just search Elmer Keith, one of the first images, at least on DuckDuckGo, that pops up is a flyer from Rock Island Auction that was selling off some of the guns from his estate. And one of them is a absolutely amazingly engraved Smith & Wesson Model 29, which is on the flyer. But you see Elmer Keith with a pair of, appears to be Smith & Wesson Model 29s, kind of in a at the hip gunfighter grip with a pipe in his teeth. And I'm counting them. There's all 10 fingers. So good on him. Indeed.
Good on him.
And he also, you can see a lot of pock marks and scarring on him, but most of that is from the fire where he was burnt as a child.
So, Weer'd, who hopefully has all 10 of their fingers?
Would that be our listeners?
Our listeners.
Who has 10 fingers and likes to listen to the podcasts? These guys. Thank you, each and every one of our listeners. We really appreciate everything you do for us, and Aaron's right. We'd still be doing this even if you weren't here. But since you are there, you're keeping it from being weird. But also, we'd like to give a very special thanks to all our supporters on Patreon. So we got a Patreon patron. Go to patreon.com/Assorted Calibers podcast to sign up. But it's not just a tip jar. It's not charity. We're selling stuff. There's things like you get early reviews of the podcast. There's bonus content like the hilarious blooper reels, the ACB film tracks, and the ACB Mag Dump.
Also, please remember to rate us on Apple Podcasts and Pocket Casts. Subscribe to us on the platform of your choice, and share the show. And share the show with your friends, both online and off.
I got a blog. It's called WeerdWorlds.com. That's WeerdWorld.com. And hear me weekly on Handgun Radio on the Firearms Radio Network.
And you can get more from me at Linktree/Aaron Paulette. That's linktree.ee/Aaron Paulette, all one word.
And thanks to Nate Spencer for our music.
Don't be jealous, because I'm out getting mine. Weer'd with the gauge and Aaron with the 9. Our readiness for the chumps on the wall is assorted, and so's our podcast, y'all. Good night, everyone.
Good night. Well done, Aaron.